637, Nashville's Morning News on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome on in. Dan Mandis here along with Johnny B. Ken Weaver. Wednesday, June 12th. Partly cloudy today, by the way, in a high of 86. Jonathan Fahey is joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline. Jonathan, I think there are a lot of people that were surprised yesterday that justice was actually served in the Hunter Biden case.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, I think when we were talking about this yesterday, I just didn't know what to think because you have a case with sort of with overwhelming evidence of his guilt, but you still had the fact that he's, a Biden in Delaware with Jill Biden in the audience, all these other external pressures. So I think when I saw that the verdict came in, I forgot around what time, but it came in relatively quickly. And it was a little bit surprising, and I think in a good way. You do like to see the jury system work, and you do want to have some faith in the system that people are treated fairly and not, and which we didn't see in New York. So it's nice to see it here. I think the interesting thing is how quickly we're going to the sort of the media pivot as now Hunter Biden is some sort of victim. It's a guy that's, we talked about yesterday. He's had a life of no responsibility, complete debauchery, living in luxury. It's like, he's like one of these, it's like remember when VH1 used to do those behind the music things? He's like the biggest rock star ever, and we're supposed to feel sorry for this guy. And it's really pathetic. And, you do look at all of these people that have basically enabled him. This may actually be the best thing that happened to him to have to take some responsibility. Although, as we talked about yesterday, I think he's going to be pardoned, November 6th or somewhere shortly thereafter by his dad.
Do you think that he will actually lose on appeal? And do you think that there is a possibility that he would spend some time in jail?
I think on the second one, I think yes. I think because I was looking at, there's the sentencing, there's like these U.S. sentencing guidelines, which are advisory for the judges. They don't have to follow them. But I think the guidelines advise, I believe, a range of between 10 to 16 months incarceration. So even if a judge were to go below them, I think to go completely from the lowest end of 10 months down to 0, I think might be a bit of a reach. So I wouldn't be surprised if he serves some time in jail, because other people similarly situated, and there's probably nobody similarly situated to him, but that have been convicted of this crime or maybe similar crimes, probably are serving time in jail. And if we are to believe this should be a crime, which now a lot of people are saying it shouldn't, that this is a public safety issue, like we talked about yesterday. Look how this gun was thrown in a dumpster. This guy was doing crack every 20 minutes. This isn't the type of person you want, possessing firearms as far as a public safety issue. On the appeal issue, there's interesting cases, and I'm not, an expert on this issue, but there's a lot of cases percolating through the courts that will benefit him, on the Second Amendment issue, that I think he has a reasonable chance, not because of anything about the deficiencies in his case at all with the government presented, but there's an overall Second Amendment issue, which essentially says, the argument is you can't legislate anything relating to guns that wasn't the type of thing that was being legislated against at the time of the founding of the nation, or when the Constitution was adopted. So that the argument would be, well, you didn't have forms people had to fill out, or there were no laws against being a drug user and possession of a firearm then, so therefore you can't regulate it now. And that type of argument has gotten some traction in some of the appellate courts. I think there's a Fifth Circuit case that's floating around. So he will be the beneficiary of that argument, but that argument is really a total side from the merits of his case. It's just whether or not this constitutional issue percolates up to the Supreme Court and benefits him.
641 Nashville's Morning News on WTN. Jonathan Fahey, our legal analyst, is joining us. Jonathan, I know that I don't remember if I've spoken to you specifically about this aspect of it. I know that I've talked about it, but the laptop was entered into evidence. Now, this is the first time, it seems to me anyway, that there's now been an official recognition that the laptop is real and the contents are real as well. Do you think this is going to have any kind of an impact on anything related to the contents of that laptop, or any investigations the Republicans are making?
I don't know, like, as far as the merits of what's in the laptop, if it will affect any of these investigations. I don't really know. And I also think, with these investigations, I think it's worthy of going forward with these investigations, although we are getting to the point of the election around the corner, right? We're almost, we're halfway into June. But I do think it is interesting with this laptop that I'm sure you've talked about a lot, but, this was a big issue in the 2020 campaign, and the Democrats decided it was a big issue by all of their efforts to suppress the laptop, the media, and collusion with them. And it really did, so much to destroy, I think, people that already are skeptical of our mainstream media, just to show how they were basically in cahoots with the Democrats to suppress this story. And a lot of the there was polling afterwards that said if people had known that this was real, it may have changed their votes. That's speculation, I know, but it's just one of these things. There was this concerted effort to suppress any information about the laptop, to censor anyone that talked about it, to mock anyone that was trying to say it was legitimate, which is a standard tactic. The crazy one was, Donald Trump saying this is legitimate versus all of these trusted, former intel people. And it really was a disgraceful moment for our electoral system and for the media. So I hope that gets some traction when the media tries to, the next story that comes out and they try to bury it or try to mock people that talk about it. It's like, wait, you've done this here. You've done it with Russian collusion. Yep. We suppress, speech on COVID and all that all happened to be correct. And now, now this. But in terms of what's in it, I'm sure there's some damaging stuff in it to Hunter Biden, to the Biden family. And that's the real question, is why is this guy that does crack cocaine every 20 minutes, which, it's fine to feel sorry for him, but nobody in the business world is going to do business in a legitimate way with somebody that does crack every 20 minutes. That's not a sound business decision. And people with millions of dollars don't have millions of dollars for making dumb decisions. So why were people giving this guy, James Biden, also his Joe Biden's brother, so much money for no one could even explain what they were doing? It's not like, they had the Biden store or whatever. It's just, so I think those are the questions that almost this gun issue kind of, distracts from the real issue that, the corruption issue, which is really the heart of what's going on here. And this just happened to be a side issue that came up in the context of those investigations. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And I know that both Hunter and James Biden, they are accused of committing perjury. This now is even more of an issue. And so I know that that's also part of the conversation, including something called knowing perjury. And basically that means that Hunter, he knew the questions were coming and he had the answers at the ready, and he knew that the answers were lies in front of Congress. And so part of my question would be, will the Attorney General Merrick Garland, will he now go after Hunter and James for perjury?
I would think the answer will be no, because, he can already take credit for this gun case to say, hey, look, we really are fair. In fact, when we all know that the truth was they tried to kill this case, and it was just because of these whistleblowers coming forward that it was sort of revived. But yeah, I don't think he will. And the other thing that's percolating in Congress right now is this contempt for Merrick Garland. This pending that I think they're having a vote on it today because he won't turn over the Her tape. And it's just ironic because you have these people like Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro that are going to prison. I think, Navarro's in prison. I think Bannon is supposed to report, I think, around July for contempt of Congress. And now you have people in the Biden wing, you got James Biden and Hunter lying to Congress, knowing they're lying to Congress. That should be taken seriously. And my guess is it won't. And then you also have Merrick Garland, who has no real reason to not turn over the Her tape other than it must be just incredibly damaging to Joe Biden, which makes me dying to see hear this thing because it's probably so bad because, we see him on TV and we know that's bad. Mm-hmm. And people are used to that, so it has to be worse than that.
There's a reason. Yeah, there's a reason why they're trying to keep that under wraps. So we have a super text line here, and Jonathan, and somebody has a question for you specifically, and that is 0045. Can you explain to us simple folks what happens to Trump's nomination if he does go to jail? I mean, I realize we're in uncharted territory here, but I mean, what are your thoughts?
I don't think anything happens to his nomination. At this point, he has the delegates. They're his delegates. So if he's in jail, I think there could always be, there's probably some machinery within the party that could possibly change it. But I don't think there's anyone, absent a very small percentage in the Republican Party, that would do anything to try to move him away from being the nominee, because I've not heard anyone. I haven't even heard Democrats really defend the conviction of Donald Trump in a serious way. I mean, they're really, really happy about it, but nobody really thinks that was a serious case. So, if he's in jail, he'll be campaigning for, he'll be given the speech, through the little phone and the glass thing and the orange jumpsuit, and I think people will tune in, because and I think if he actually went to jail on this, I think people, and who really knows how people react, but I think this just seems like even a bridge too far. I mean, the case in and of itself was, but this would just seem extraordinarily heavy-handed and political that I think people would be so turned off. We shouldn't do that in this country.
I think if he does go to jail, I don't think Donald Trump has to say anything. I mean, I think the actions of the left would really be enough said, and that would be really advantageous, although he'd be sitting in jail, but that'd be advantageous for Donald Trump. Bottom line is we don't know what's going to happen with the hush money case. And so there's a lot of factors in there. Will he go through the appellate system? Will he go to the straight to the Supreme Court? What's going to happen with the sentencing I believe it's going to be on July 11th. So there's a lot that we really don't know right now. And so it's one of those things that, for me, it's a serious issue, but it's also a big distraction from some of the other big stories that are out there. And I know that I only left about 90 seconds left for this, but we've been talking about the guys that were arrested with ties for ISIS. They came across our southern border. Your thoughts on that?
It is so. It's just. I want to say it's amazing, but it's just so horrible that this administration is willing to put all of our lives at risk to, terrorism, to gangs, to fentanyl, because they want to keep this border open. And they will do anything to keep this border open. I mean, this is probably the highest priority and their greatest success as an administration, because they campaigned on open borders. Essentially, they never said the words, open borders, but that's what they were essentially saying. And they will do nothing. Nothing will stop them. And they're putting all of us at risk, and they just don't care. And you look back at, a couple months ago with the Lake and Riley murder, and this administration, they had to be bullied into saying, even condolences about this. Yep. And it just shows just how awful they are. We're at risk. They're doing nothing to stop it. We're just relying at this point. Our safety is relying on the good graces of our enemies. And that's really a horrible thing. And, you see Director Wray sometimes testifying about all these tools the FBI needs, and he's always really sheepish about saying, well, the main thing is we let anyone come into our country and we do nothing to stop them. Like, that's a far greater security risk than not having a particular FISA tool or something like that. But it's like, it's so awful. And then when something bad happens, we'll have to be like, oh, we can't, blame anyone, type of thing. I know. But it's like, we all know the game, and it's really so cynical what they're doing, because they think this will ultimately help them electorally.
All right, Jonathan Fahey, always great commentary, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.